Blog Talk Radio.
Here at ACO Radio, American Communications Online, or any affiliated stations or websites are not responsible for what guest hosts or call-ins may say. All programming is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only.
Oh, I apologize. Hello, world. I apologize. I was on the wrong channel. Fancy that. Dumb me. Okay, let's call back in. I apparently wasn't being heard, so let me try this again. Tonight, Janet Carolson and Teresa J. Morris together are hosting ACO Association Authors Book Club, and I apologize if we had some time missing. I think she and I left the planet for a minute. So, Janet, if you can get our host to call back in, our guest. Our guest tonight is a member of an Authors Club, unofficially, in our Facebook group. And I've asked him to be our poster child for tonight by invitation only. His name is Paul G. Vecchiet, author, member, and I'm going to get Janet to read about him in our American Communications Online radio station we are putting together as ACIR Radio. Janet and I have been together since 2012 in this radio business, but she and I started back in the day. So today we've got a veteran. Janet was a contractor in Hawaii, and I was too, but I was also in uniform. So, Janet, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I was talking away and nobody could hear me.
Me too.
This is simulcast with the Aquarian Radio Network, and today's show is called Portal Stargate. That's our Thursday show. And as I was talking away to no one but myself, today,
Me too.
Paul Vecchiet is, let me tell you a little bit about him. He was born in Italy. He arrived in the U.S. at the age of 3. He settled in Chicago for a couple of years, then he moved to the southwest suburb of Hickory Hills, where he went to a Catholic school, and he was in the Catholic school the entire 8 years of elementary school. He graduated high school and went to UIC, which I don't know what that stands for architecture, and he earned a degree in design in 1981. He joined the Air Force in 82. He got commissioned as a second lieutenant. And he currently works for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Winchester, Virginia. He's written a book, and I have all this up on aquarianradio.com where I keep all the descriptions. And I know TJ's going to put it on one or two of her websites, and she can let you know where you can find this information. But his book is called, let me get back to the Disclosure Paradox. And there's a synopsis and the bio for Paul there. So is Paul showing online, or should I text him?
He did, but he hung up because he like you, couldn't hear. We were both on the wrong channel. I flipped the board the wrong direction. Yeah, we've got so many radio stations. This will be on Aquarian Radio. This will be on TJ Morris ET Radio, ACIR Radio, and, of course, all our distribution channels, iHeart, iApple, or whatever they call it these days. It used to be iTunes. Ooh, getting a lot of feedback. Here, Janet, I'll call him. Let me call him, because that's too much feedback on yours.
I didn't know if he had the number. But he gave me a number to call. Do you have it?
Yeah, I can see it, the one he called in. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm dialing it right now. I don't know if we'll be able to hear him, but we'll see.
Okay.
Because, let's see if we can hear him. All these different channels. Hi, can you hear us now?
Yes. Sorry about that.
Great. That's okay. It wasn't you. It was I have so many radio channels in this station that I didn't know which one to tune in. That was my bad, Paul, not yours. So Janet's read your description, and we'll have a little dead air between the disclaimer and the bumper on the front, and then Janet and I had dead air because she and I were both introducing our radio stations at the same time, and our affiliates blocked us out. So sorry. So we'll start over, Paul. Janet, this is Paul. Paul, Janet, Carol Lesson of Hawaii.
Hi, Paul.
If you'd like to say.
Hello, Janet. Nice to meet you, too.
Hi, Paul. Great. Nice to meet you. I'm really interested in your story. Can you tell us a little bit about the background on how you came up with this story? Is it fiction? Is it fact and fiction?
And I'm going to mute because she read your little background, and I'm going to mute for a minute while you talk. Okay.
All right. So things had been happening to me since 2009, and it was after I started to learn about meditation, and after that, people I would meet, psychics would give me certain messages about that I seemed to have some sort of special role, multiple psychics. I didn't think much about it. And then things started to happen to me. One big thing was that during meditation I experienced going through a wormhole, which was an amazing out-of-body experience. Then I met another psychic woman, and she started to give me messages, and the messages were coming from another source. So she would go into a trance, and she would give me information. She wouldn't know what she was giving to me, so I would have to record it and essentially what it was is this group or entity that called themselves the Watchers. They were communicating to me through her, and they were repeating pretty much what the other psychics were saying, that I had a role to play, that I was going to be a counselor and informer, and they would put me through various tests and so on. And this went on for a good 3 years. It wasn't every day that I would get these messages from this woman, just probably every month or every other month. And then another out-of-body experience was actually going to what people would call God, the source, where I saw what you would describe as just many flashes of indigo light, looking like a beehive of activity, and what those were the spirits between lives, all in one cluster, and that cluster is the source. So anyway, I was trying to process all this information, and I was trying to figure out, how can I tell people about this? And one weekend, after meeting another psychic woman, I wrote an outline, 31 pages, in one weekend of outline. And after that, a mark that appears like a burn mark appeared on my arm. And it's a perfect triangle with a bisecting line and a circle in it. And my psychic friend told me that it's a sign of acceptance. So once I did that, I understood that I needed to write the novel.
And so the novel is fiction, but it's about real facts, things that were going on and are going on in your life, correct?
Yes, what I did is I took those 10 years of my experiences and messages from various people. I condensed it into a 2-week dynamic cross-country journey. All the characters are based on the real people. The main character, of course, is based on myself, but I had to sprinkle in some fiction in there because really, if I told the truth and it was 10 years and there wasn't much activity going on, it really just would be a boring memoir. And there's too many people writing memoirs that have greater experiences than I do. So I decided to write a pseudo-autobiography in a science fiction manner.
So then we're left to figure.
What's that?
Whoops, she fell off. Sorry,
yeah.
Paul. She's in Hawaii. She'll come back. She's, we're at the mercy of the satellites sometimes. She'll be right back. But, Paul, so how long have you been an author? I think I put on here you've only got your book out since November. But I'd like to, all right, so November of this, so you're new. So I'd like to put you in our authors club, and we're going to put that up in our directory and start putting our new authors with their books. Now, is this available on Kindle for those that may want to read it?
Yes, it is. It's available on Amazon, of course, and it is on Kindle. So yes, it's available both ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Janet and I work here. She comes back. Okay, she's starting to show up now. I'll bring her back in. Janet, I'll bring you back in for Aquarium Radio in Maui, Hawaii with our Ascension Center, and we do education and counseling, and I'm actually a psychic as well, Paul, and I got started back in a gold pyramid and was called by God myself. And a lot of people didn't know if we were dealing with other entities or angels or extraterrestrials. But Janet and I got started here a long time ago. Stanton P. Friedman was our first real interview on TJ Morris ET Radio. So I had his blessing. And then do you know who Stanton T. Friedman is, Paul?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Very popular, very famous, and he passed away recently, I thought.
Right. He and I were on some investigations together with Don Berliner, Don Berliner. I believe Don says Berliner. And he helped me start UFO Association years ago. And it's like an invisible college for many of us. So I'd like to know anything you know about your Air Force. And if you will, tell us anything that you did with the Air Force that you think may relate to Stanton Friedman, our UFO Association, our Invisible College, or if you had anything to do with security or intel, or give us where you worked on the bases. Sure. And me and Janet will listen, and then she'll come back. Okay. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, interesting you say that, because in the chapter called Into the Rabbit Hole, that really is the event that opened my eyes that there was some alternative, things going on that we're not being told about. So when I was a captain in the Air Force, and I was assigned at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, I was assigned to Aeronautical Systems Division, and in civil engineering, we have various offices there where we support the research and development part of the Air Force. We would support them both for getting contracts with architectural engineers, and also we would be doing stuff day to day on the base, because the base had laboratories. So one of the facilities that was our client, if you will, was Foreign Technology Division. And the mission of Foreign Technology Division is to, I don't know if it still exists, but it was to collect data from foreign forces, identify strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities related to our mission. So we try to identify their weaknesses so we can take advantage of them. And then we would identify their strengths and things that we were not quite ready to defend against. And then they would take that information and give it to our R&D guys. So one of the jobs that I had, a task that I had, was to inspect a project on the second floor of that complex. It was a two-story metal building, a warehouse, very large. And the entire second floor was gutted and was going to have like supercomputers in there. At that time, in the late 80s, we still, we weren't quite in the micro sizes yet. So they needed a lot of space for what they were doing over there. And, obviously it was classified of what they were doing, so I didn't know what they were doing. I just was there to look at space, make sure that the contractor was prepared to do the construction, making sure that there weren't any conflict between what was in the space and what was on the documents and things like that. So when you go to the Foreign Technology Division building, it was surrounded by motion detectors on the lawn. And then when you go to the entry control point, regardless of your security clearance, you had to be escorted. So, and I had this all pretty well detailed in the novel, by the way. So I was escorted up to the second floor, and it was, it was gutted. There were no ceiling. Light fixtures were temporary. It was dark, and it was quite like an echo chamber in there. And I looked for the drawings that were called the as-built. For anyone who doesn't know, as-built are essentially drawings that indicate the condition of the building at the time of that the contractor could know what he has existing, and we could compare that with the project drawings, which indicate what is going to be. So I was looking at the as-built drawings and making sure that they were comparing well with what was in the building. And I was thumbing through them, and I came upon a sheet that indicated basement. And I looked at it and I thought, warehouses don't have basements. There's no basement in this building. There's no stairs to the basement. But I made sure that it was not a misplacement of a sheet. So I looked, and sure enough, it matched the outline of the building. And I thought, oh, okay, this is very interesting. This place has a basement, but no one knows about it. So I flipped through it some more, and then I see a close-up or a enlargement of a part of that basement. And the enlargement was for an area about 70 by 90 feet. So it's kind of large. And it indicated cryogenic chamber. And then right there I thought, I should not be seeing this, because this is obviously very classified information. It should not be in this set. And I knew right away what that was for. So I quietly put the drawings back where I found them, didn't say anything to anyone for 5 years. After I left the service, then reading Phil Corso's book about the day after Roswell, he indeed indicates that the shipments were sent to Wright-Patterson. So you put all of those pieces together, and it makes sense, first of all, that you have Foreign Technology Division, which is the office that is supposed to take care of research and development of foreign things. And sure enough, they have a cryogenic chamber which is large enough to house a lot of things, not just specimens or what it's used for mostly outside. It is for doing tests on petri dishes and stuff. This was large.
Can I ask you, legally, I don't know where you and I stand, because I, too, have been to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I, too, was brought on base and escorted by somebody in a car, I guess, because I was in a big truck, and I went into a hangar. So I find it very curious that you and I have crossed paths. Want to do synchronicity and all that, being that Janet and I started this, and our first interview was Stanton T. Friedman, and he's now passed. But like I said, my husband and I actually worked together, and Stan was very curious because we had a copy of MJ-12, and he wanted to make sure of ATIC and what Rick Doty was doing back then, Linda Moulton Howell, and he was started, later on he wrote books with Betty and Barney Hill's niece, and I've talked with her, so we're all involved in this. So now I find it very odd that somehow you and I got together, and I'm going to let Janet ask questions, and she can ask both of us questions since we've both been there. Some she can come up with, because none of us are prepared for tonight, folks. This is synchronicity and action. The universe sets us up for things like this. And this is a disclosure paradox, and I totally agree with that. But now your book is called The Disclosure, or as we were taught in school. THE is The Disclosure Paradox by Paul G. Vecchiet. Now, would you say your name properly for everybody, please, for me and Janet too?
No, you said correctly. Vecchiet.
Vecchiet. Is that French?
No, it's Italian.
Italian, okay.
Yeah, it's just to give you a little background. My original name from our ancestors is Stark, S-T-A-R-C, with the two letters of Slavic. So really, I have a Slavic background. I was born in Trieste, which is on the border of Slovenia. So my father's side was on the Yugoslavian side, and what happened was they changed the name to Vecchiet. By the way, Stark means old in Slavic. So they changed the name to Vecchiet because the Italians were oppressing the Slavs at that time. Must have been, I think, the early 1800s, I suppose. And Vecchiet means old also, so that's how that came about. And there's a lot of Vecchiets in this world. Hello?
Hi. Okay, a lot of Vecchiets in this world. That's good. It's something I'm going to back on. Okay.
Can I add something to our last conversation about FTD, though?
Go ahead.
I went on Google Earth just to look at and to, when I was writing about it in the novel, I went to look on Google Earth to look for the building, and you can't miss the building from the air. It was huge. And it is not there. There's no sign of it. I think what is in its place is a parking lot. So you can imagine they took the time to not only remove it, but fill in the basement excavation too. And there's no sign of it. If you look and you search for, if it was Building 1, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Area A, there is no information on the internet about that thing. Nothing.
So they have removed everything, so you can't validate and say zoom in here. And did they do that often? I was on Johnson Atoll, and they had a public story that they vacated everything, but I still, I've had some indicators that they still have the underground facilities. And the official story is it's no longer there. So you said you saw cryogenic chambers. First of all, how did you know they were cryogenic chambers? What does that mean? What does that look like physically that you can walk by and say, oh, that's a cryogenic chamber? What were you looking at?
I was looking just at the drawings. The drawings had the design of the cryogenic chamber, and it had the actual title. And it had the dimension, so that's what I was looking at.
You last there? When were you last there? Here, Pete.
When I.
You said it's no longer there. When did you last see this facility? Mm-hmm.
I was there from 1987 to 1991.
Okay. And you haven't been back since, so...
No.
And then you've looked at the Google Earth and you saw that things had changed.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you remember
what did you see when you were there?
Well, I was driving through. I've been there many times, but as a truck driver going on there, I was delivering parts, Janet. So we just locked and loaded, so to speak, and we were responsible for the load till we got there, and then you must have your fan on. That is your fan on,
No, I don't have any
Janet?
fans on. No.
It must be your speakers picking up air. Sounds like a big fan's on.
I turned off my computer speakers. Yeah.
Huh.
Nothing's on right now.
I wonder what it's picking up. Can you hear that? Can you hear it, Paul, when she talks, air?
I can hear it pretty well. Sometimes it tends to be a little muddled, but it's fine.
Okay. Janet, you can go back and listen. You'll see what I was talking about. But, yeah, we'll mute in between because she and I are in hot parts of the country, folks. So if you hear this fan's in the background, we apologize. But, anyway, to answer your question, Janet, I'm going to put it on there. While I talk, Janet, I'm going to put you on mute so you can hear the difference. But what I saw, Janet, was men in a hangar. And when I was escorted on, I was brought there for a meeting with something very interesting because they wanted me to meet Bill. and I don't know. I guess that's the gentleman you met, and I don't know if Paul met anybody on base, but I'm trying to figure out the synchronicity of who's putting us together. But I will ask Paul, when I was in the military, they were talking about Hangar 18, and then there was 11 or so, but now in Hawaii, they would tell people to tell me about that, and they would be talking, I'd say here in Hawaii, and they'd say, no, Wright Patterson. But I'll put Janet back on in just a second. But Paul, did you ever hear any scuttlebutt of people in the military that would act like there was something secret going on in Hangar 18 or 11 or any of them like that?
No, this was before I became aware. So I was just following the day-to-day operations there. We were so busy, there wasn't time to interact on that level. The Hangar 18 that you mentioned, I saw that also on a Discovery Channel episode somewhere on one of those UFO things, and they mentioned Hangar 18. So it appears to be a common question. And before that, I never heard of it, and I was trying to imagine which building would be that Hangar 18, because when I was there, most of the hangars in Area B were for the U.S. Air Force Museum and their maintenance. So, and in fact, my building was attached to one of the hangars that was used for the maintenance. Another hangar, which was across from us, was used for testing weapons. What they would do is they would have a Gatling gun, and they wouldn't test the weapons. They would test aircraft engines to see how they would perform with direct fire. But that's the only thing that I know about the hangars. The other side of the base, which is Area C, was the operational side, and on that side was a reserve unit. And there was nothing hush-hush going on over there. That was strictly the operational side of the base. So if there was anything that was top secret going on, it was Area B.
Okay. Janet, any more questions? And we'll keep this ball rolling.
Yeah, so I wanted to know what you each had seen. So you were not in the same location, it seems, by the descriptions that we're getting from both of you. How big was Wright Patterson? How many personnel did it hold at its height? Was it like, I was on a base and there were only 3,000 people on the entire island. So the base part was probably, I don't know, probably half civilians and then half military.
Yeah.
So
I think
what
we
kind
had
of population?
30,000 civilians working on the base, and probably 10,000 active duty. And the base straddled a state road, so you had Wright Patterson was actually made up of two bases, Wright Field and Patterson. And Wright Field was the older part, and the origins of Wright Field go back to all the way to the Wright brothers. So,
okay.
The buildings there were dated as far back as 1921, maybe even farther back than that. And the newer part was Patterson Field, and then they decided to merge them together as one massive installation.
So that was a good size. Mine was a very tiny base compared to what
It's huge. It's
you guys
one one of the biggest employers in Ohio, well, in Dayton for certain, in Ohio. Yeah.
Are they still active?
Oh, absolutely.
Still,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Very active.
Okay. When I was growing up in Pittsburgh, they had small bases, and they kept closing it one after another. But I just think consolidate things and move things all the time to keep us guessing. Okay, so you were taking loads in, TJ. You didn't know what you were carrying.
Well, I think it had to do with what they had there when I went there. But yeah, I had some meetings, and if I don't know if William Tompkins was supposed to be the same bill, but the guy had funny hair, and I think that's weird because Giorgio Tsoukalos, is that his name?
Yeah.
Weird name, but they both had strange hair, and I don't know. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that people have been seated in ATIC and the Air Force, and some know more than others in the intelligence community. And I worked in GS in uniform. I worked Joint Chiefs of Staff, JOS, and I was in a special program, special access program. So I never knew who was feeding me with real information. I'm sure Rick Doty had the same problem. But just so you folks know, a lot of us in uniform do a job, but when we're out of uniform, we're GS or civilian, like Janet and I are contractors. But a lot of us get out and we write books. But I just want to mention real quick, the National Museum of the United States Air Force that Paul is mentioning is still there, and it's a wonderful place. If you go there, please check it out. And then if you come over here where I'm at, we have the Pensacola. I don't know if you have been here or not, but we have a museum here too. We also have the Blue Angels, Naval Air Station, Pensacola, and we have a museum here called National Naval Aviation Museum at the NAS Pensacola. And it's the oldest naval air station, NAS Pensacola. So National Naval Air Station, please put us, it was built in, the Naval Air Station year built 1913. I don't know. Have you been here by chance with the Air Force, Paul, to Pensacola? Or I'm surely you know about the Blue Angels, though.
No, I haven't been to any of the Navy bases over there, but we did some training at Eglin. You know where Eglin is?
Eglin Air Force Base, yeah, I've been there too. So what I'd like to do, Janet, is try to figure out what you and me and all know synchronicity, but those are the two museums. I just wanted to put that in there because, folks, we're always going to be looking for sponsors because we're just starting the three of us together for the Authors Club. And I'm putting UFO on here. Stanton is no longer with us, and I've got the UFO Association organization if you're interested, because we have a lot of enthusiasts, and we're learning to work together as authors. We're all independent authors. All right, so back to the what Janet will call the meat and the guts or whatever of the show. Paul, have you got any questions thus far?
Have I what?
Have you got any questions so far?
Paul's story, like what Paul wants to bring to the table, because he's the new person. I already know what I know about me. I'd like to learn new things here. So Paul, what can you tell us? I know you were in the military, you're still in the military, and you fictionalize your story for a lot of reasons. But what are some of the most important things that we might get if we read your story, or that you want to tell us in the course of the hour and a half that remains?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because
yes.
The military is just a small part of that. It's just my awakening process. The way I write the novel is the reader will walk through the progress of how the main character first became aware of strange things happening, or became aware that there was some suppressed information. And then little by little, we would go into what you would call the rabbit hole, getting into researching information, getting on the internet, meeting different people, and it would start out as just research about maybe the suppression of inventions that would help us loosen our dependence on foreign oil, for instance, or even energy that is not a fossil fuel energy, but other kinds, like, for instance, engines that run on water, that kind of thing. So that's it started out with that, and then learning about other things like the suppression of cancer cures, the chemtrails that seem to be appearing every once in a while. All of those things are mentioned in the novel as the progress of getting to where the main character decided to embark on this journey. So, it starts out with this kind of real information that is tangible, and then he starts to understand that there is another facet to all of this, and that there's a spiritual facet where he gets in contact with the psychics, and they start to open him up spiritually, teaching him about meditation. So I walk the reader through that, and the reader should be able to actually relate to this journey that the main character goes through, because I'm sure that other people have had the same progress of going from not knowing to going to wow, there's all kinds of stuff going on that I didn't know about, and then finally to having the spiritual awareness. So what I would like the reader to get when they are done reading the novel is this. If you're an atheist, understand that there is a higher power out there. There are things that we cannot see or touch, and they exist and they impact our lives. If you are a very religious person, understand that those higher powers can be explained using science and physics. And that's the point of the novel, really, bridge the huge gap that we have right now between science and religion, and hopefully to open up people to spirituality rather than just religion. And it presents the link, that there is a link between UFOs, extraterrestrials, and our human spirituality.
So what is this link? How do you describe it?
Well, there is also a deceased person that was very popular in our circles. His name was Robert Dean. Do you recall him?
Yeah, I knew Robert very well. Yeah, I knew Robert. I worked with him. He was lovely. So go ahead. I'm going to have to mute my husband's making food behind me, so I'm going to be muted. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I could hear him in the background. But, yeah, I'll go ahead and speak to that, because Janet and I have formed our little radio show wrapped around Bob Dean. And, matter of fact, there's a picture up, if folks would like to look at it, with TJ Morris CT Radio. If you'll go there, there's a picture of me, Janet, Bob Dean, Robert Dean, Paul on TJ Morris CT Radio, where your show is live right now. So, folks, if you can hear us everywhere while listening around the world, or you'd like to come back to the podcast, we didn't know he was going to say this, but I told you this I do universal cosmos ambassador work to bring the synchronicities together. And not everybody understands being a keeper of the flame or a precognitive psychic medium and remote viewing and how all of this ties in. But Paul is doing that with his book called The Disclosure Paradox. And Janet's here with me as authors to offer support because I called it the Ascension Age in my books. And we made the New Age books around all the book stores. I met Deepak Chopra. But to answer your question, Paul, of course we know who Bob Dean is. So what we need to do with people like you, is especially prior military or younger than us, or in our same age group, is establish when do they feel like, and I've seen this on many, many YouTubes, do you believe you came here because Ascension Center education is about awakening the soul and to understand the soul purpose, not only based on your spiritual path in this reality, on this side of the veil. I've even seen Richard Dolan, historian, try to learn how to speak the Ascension Age and the Ascension Age awakening. So I'll let Janet speak to that as well, because we can all do that. But this is your show, Paul, about your interview. But when did you finally feel like you were awakened to the fact that Stanton Friedman and Paul and Bob Dean and maybe other people like, I guess, Don Berliner, or I'm trying to think of some of the big names in the business, Dr. Bruce Maccabee, Jan, about CUFOs or NICAP or FUFOs or anything to do with flying saucers, because it is coming together. So I named it the Ascension Age because of the Ascension Age awakening, and because I was part of a movement in the 80s, and we had 1111, and we had so many people working together in the psychic realm. So yes, they're evolving together, but a lot of people don't know that. So back to you, and then Janet, I'm sure, will be full of questions because she runs the Ascension Center Education, or ACE Network. So Paul, when do you think you woke up to the fact that these realities were crossing in your life? When did you feel like you woke up that maybe the metaphysical world or the sages and the mystics and the oracles may be right, so to speak?
I would say August of 2013 is when I had multiple occurrences, synchronous events, messages from the watchers. That's when it all came together for me. It had been leading up to that. I never strayed from trying to do more and more research, trying to learn all of the angles related to both the phenomenon, the UFO phenomenon and our spirituality. And when I was listening to Robert Dean, it certainly made a lot of sense what he was saying, and my novel kind of parrots what Robert Dean was saying about our spirituality and the links to the extraterrestrials. It's not as complex as you think. It's very simple, really. The fact is that, and guys, there have been instances where things have been happening personally, where I understand how the spirit world works. So here's one aspect of what is written in the novel, and it's really based on what Robert Dean said. And the Earth is very important to the universe, very important. When we explored the atomic bomb, it was like a fire or alarm throughout the universe. That's why we have had so many sightings since the atomic age. And most of the activity of UFOs is really geared at looking and doing surveillance on our nuclear facilities. Why? Because we are not spiritually advanced enough to be able to handle that kind of technology. We still don't know enough about that technology to be able to be ethical with it. For example, our scientists do not understand that a detonation of that magnitude has so much energy and power that it actually affects other dimensions. And that's why it was like a fire alarm in the universe when we detonated the bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So the Earth is very important to the universe because it is a kindergarten for our spirits. It is where the spirits enter the human body, and the spirits learn about love, about creativity, beauty, even about pain and suffering. It's all here for us to learn. If we learn our lesson, then we ascend. If we don't learn our lesson, then we come back and we learn it again. Very simple. Our race is not as important to them as the planet. The planet is important throughout the universe. So that's where one link is. Now, the other part, which is more sinister, and I go into it a little bit, is that there are entities that don't want us to ascend, because when we ascend to a positive or, the more benevolent kind of energy, and there are malevolent energies out there, and there are, as we speak, we may not know it, but there are battles going on between good and evil spiritually. There's a spiritual war for our souls, and that's what I told a colonel who I identify in the novel in Chapter 8. He's the divine warrior. That's what I told him, and that made him wake up and divulge all kinds of things to me about his spirituality. So, I'm going on tangents here, but I'm trying to explain that these malevolent entities, they may be extraterrestrial, they may be interdimensional, but they don't want us to ascend. So what do? They want to make certain that there is much pain and suffering on this planet as possible. So they're behind, anything that you see that really doesn't make sense and is causing, disbelief for people, and really is unnecessary. And, people wonder, why would God do this? Well, that's not what's happening. It's really a war for our souls. You there? Anyone?
TJ, are you there? Okay, I'll talk.
Yeah, I was letting you talk,
okay.
Janet. That's why I told you when I say I'm mute, it's cue for you,
okay.
Janet, because he's bringing you back to why I started the Ascension Center, Janet, back in the 80s, and I became a minister in that gold pyramid where we talked about Stephen Halpern.
Right.
And Stephen Halpern came on here once. But I want you, Janet, to see the synchronicities. I did not cue him at all, and this is what I do, folks. But I don't even know how Paul and I crossed paths, but he said he sent me about his book on one. But, Janet, he has only been awake since we started this radio show in 2012 about his other reality.
A lot of people are waking up now. A lot of people are becoming aware that something's happening on some level that's waking people up. There's all kinds of theories. It's curious that he's convened on Robert O'Dean's information because Bob is no longer with us. But Bob was very important in my life. I started going to all the UFO conferences. I met my husband in 97, and from the get-go we started going to these UFO conferences. And so Bob would be sitting there every year at the end of the speech. He'd say, "That's it. I'm not coming out anymore. That was the last one. I'm going to go retire." And we'd say, "Bob, you can't. We need you. You're not allowed to retire." So then he would come back, and then one year he said, "That's it for real. I know I say this every year. I'm not coming back." And he didn't. He didn't come back for 5 years. Well, and he was getting up there, and he, it was hard for him to travel. So he said, when he came back, he said, yeah, he had some kind of episode, and he was in a coma. And he said that the entire time he was in this coma, he was on board on ship. And he said, "Oh, don't send me back. This is home. I don't want to go back." And so anyway, when he came back, he decided he wanted to get out again, just to do something again. So we met in Arizona with a group of 15, 20 people that were in the UFO business there, and he wanted us to put on Stargate to Cosmos. So he had been working with UFO Congress, and I don't know what was going on, but he wanted to do one final hurrah, so to speak. But it didn't come about, and now he's passed, so it's ironic that you're revoking him, because he has holds a very near and dear spot in my heart. And when we were meeting, I was just looking at each other, and we were both just crying because we had this awareness of connection to Source. Like you said, you said that you've been on the way home to Source. So somehow, looking at each other, we just started crying, these tears just streaming down our cheeks, reconnecting to Source. So he really struck a chord with you.
Yes,
with
he did.
information.
Absolutely.
And he struck a chord with me, and I was
and
very
me.
blessed to know him. And he struck a chord,
with me as well.
Yeah,
me and my husband, and working. That's when we have the Allied Command, Paul, is because there was controversy with people, even staying in our own community that you weren't aware of, because for whatever reason, we have a UFO association, but this goes way back to the 40s, and we were all tracking when I came in 51, which was December 26, 51. So I will ask you to bring up, I told you 1226, but I want you to learn how to work with Janet and I, and we have an authors book club, but you also mentioned Philip Corso, and she and I didn't have time to tear apart because we wanted you just to talk about your book. But I want you to tell me about how Philip J. Corso, because my Uncle Strom Thurmond, that's who he told me was 3 or 4 generations. I don't know if he was or not, but that's what he said. But he used to call me about working with him in the government and the UFOs, and I was caught off guard because I had been around UFOs as a child, and I considered ETs angels. But apparently he knew my name because it was spelled the same way as his. So when I went into the intelligence agency in 1967, I didn't know NASA had a big part with the CIA in the history and the clearances. I had to learn all this. But Philip Corso's name came up, and then me learning, and I don't know who all wanted me, but I believe that extraterrestrials that visited me in White Sands, and that's in one of my books, or many of my books on the Ascension Age, and what we're doing right now. Like I told you, I'm a precognitive person. I died, so I was looking for my own answer. So Janet had me take a book I had, and she wants all the details of my biography, which I don't know how I'll get them all in one book. But Ascension Age and Ascension Center are my theme, and what we're doing today with all the synchronistically involved. So I want to know what you know about Philip Corso, and then Janet can speak to Ascension Center and motivational speaking and how it all ties in, because she's been running the Ascension Center network since 2012. But let me let you speak first.
The only thing I know about Corso is from reading his book, The Day After Roswell. And I read it, pretty studiously. So very familiar with the process the things that he did, the reverse engineering that he was involved in, giving the information to people in Bell Labs and such. And so that's the only thing that I know about Phil Corso. I guess it has been a very popular book for people to read, and it's an easy read. It's not very long.
I met Phil Corso Jr. Just a few years after his father had passed. It was in the early 2000s. His father died in 98 or something, or 97 or something. Anyway, so we were just really drawn to speak with each other and talk to each other the whole time. I was at this conference over in the Big Island that Dr. Sala had produced with a couple other people. And so my husband had a millionaire friend that wanted to talk about the UFO experience, the extraterrestrial presence. And he wanted to fly us over to Austin. And he said, I want you to bring over, we'll fly over a speaker. And I tried to get a couple of the other ones, but I remembered Phil Corso Jr. He was in Florida at the time. I think he's still there. I'm not sure what city he's in. Anyway, next thing I know, my husband and I are getting on a plane, and Phil's coming over with his wife, and we're spending 3, 4, 5 days together in Austin, Texas, as he's doing a private presentation to a bunch of millionaires about the extraterrestrial presence. Because this friend of my husband's, who's a millionaire, wanted to bring about disclosure. Now, Phil Corso Jr. knew everything that his dad knew, and then some, because he was like the little kid that was happening while a lot of the things were unfolding in the book. Mm. So he had been exposed to these amazing craft and creatures, and I don't remember details because that was quite a number of years now, but I was just, he didn't even share that level of experience with the audience, the millionaires, because it was brand new to him, to them, right? But since I'm a lifelong contact experiencer, he was able to go in a lot of different directions that he couldn't with those people that didn't understand it. But I've been very blessed to have these experiences. So, TJ, did you ever get to meet Phil Corso or the son? What was your experience with Phil Corso, Senior or Junior? TJ, are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My connection to Philip Corso is through Strom Thurmond in Washington, D.C. And personally, going to Washington, my father, who's deceased, took me to Washington, D.C., and I don't know, we had different places to stay at that time. But the interesting thing about what Strom Thurmond wanted me to do, and during that time, was I was at the University of Alabama, and I was trying to put together my life as an investigator, and he knew about my Assured Confidential Investigative Reports and the ACIR, and I don't know if he knew my history with my uncles going to White Sands and working at NASA, or my aunt, but apparently Strom Thurmond knew of all our Air Force connection, and my aunt working before I got on the planet, and apparently he knew a lot of stuff. He wasn't as dumb as people think people from the South are, but we get a bad rap. We may talk funny, but I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but for this radio show. I believe this is no coincidence that Janet is asking me questions because his book, somehow back in the day, I knew he was writing it, and Strom Thurmond led me to believe that I would be working with the United States of America before. Well, it said May 67 in the newspaper I was going to Washington, D.C., so I count May 10th, 1967. So whatever Philip Corso was doing from that forward, Janet, would be of interest to the public with the name Thurmond, Thurmond, and Strom Thurmond, just like we have Laura Eisenhower and how she uses her family name with the Eisenhower stuff. But you know a lot of mine and Tom's story, but you don't know all of it. So it all ties in with me, Reagan, Tom, back to Stanton Friedman, Don Berliner, the government, NICAP, Dr. Bruce Maccabee, and as late as 94 when Dr. Bruce Cornett, he's new in my life, but apparently he's been in my life for years because he came to Gulf Breeze. Now, the extraterrestrials and the men in black and tornadoes and me deflecting hurricanes have a lot to do with me being here besides my daughter that was extraterrestrial in origin. And it all ties in together, Janet, with Thurmond and our DNA. So that's why we're going to write this book, because I'm still connecting the dots. So I believe somebody in the universe, being that you and I put the Ascension Center education together with your husband, and I started back in the 90s and you and I met, this is all synchronicities. And Paul read the book and he was touched by it, so was I. Paul and Bob Dean was touched, so was I. But back to you, Janet. Did you read the book with Philip Corso? Because I put his name and his book, I think, in some of my books. But I connected with him before he died, and I did not talk to his son like you did. But Jesse Marcel, the father, and I connected because I went to meet him in not Florida, Louisiana. And it had to do with the story that Strom Thurmond and Philip Corso were putting together. So the book has me in it that Paul read. And
I read
he doesn't.
Book.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I read the book.
I didn't know you read the book.
When it first came out, yes, and I loved it. And I was so excited about it because it resonated with my soul and it told.
Well,
some people criticized him and they said that it wasn't true or he was making it up. There's just been a lot of critics about the book, but I believed it. It made sense to me. It resonated with me, but what do I know? I can only know what I know. I don't know it all because there's too much hidden from us, right? So back to you, Paul. What were you going to say? I just heard you trying to speak.
Oh, no. There are a lot of debunkers on Phil Corso's statements, and, the one thing that the government likes is as much information as possible to be out there, because people, lay people, cannot discern between hoax and truth. Shows like X-Files is a great example. X-Files talks a lot about some things that really occur, and but at the same time, in the same manner, they present some outlandish things that certainly are untrue, but are good entertainment. And when you present those things in the same manner to an uneducated audience, they will take all of those things as fiction, as X-Files is presented. So only the more aware viewers will be able to understand what is truth and what is not. And the government likes as much information as possible to confuse the masses.
Okay, are we still on air? Sometimes it fades out.
Yeah, but
we got screwed up.
When he stops talking, I mute. I mean, when he starts talking, I mute, and I can hear that your husband and you're in the background. So I just hope you mute in between. But when I mute, then it makes y'all think I'm not here because I'm running the board. So we'll get it together, folks. This is Paul's first time in radio, and I know we hate dead air, and we have some at the beginning, but I'm just going to have to let it slide. So, Janet, with you and me, we'll get back in the groove because, folks, Janet and I have worked together for years, but we were working differently for Revolution Radio, which I've quit now. But Mad Painter's running that. He's our general manager for me, at least my friend that way, and Janet for our Cosmos Radio that we all also market and promote, or did. But I invited a Mad Painter who is Thomas R. Becker on tonight on Skype, and he can make it tonight, but he's been rather sick, Janet, I think. So This is going to be called, for me, it's Disclosure Paradox by Paul G. Vecchiet with the ACO UFO Book Club. And a lot of people do debunk UFOs, and now we have UAP. I've got UAP Associates Press, but it's wanting me to do with ACO Press Club tonight and asked me to bring up another website, which is interesting. But Paul, with me and Janet, is and I'm going to be helping people get their names out there. Are you opposed to listing your book, even though it's a novel? So is mine with my husband. My husband finally died. It sounds terrible, finally, but Janet and I worked from 2012 to 2015 to get some of my husband's stories on the radio here. And I'm sorry you didn't get to meet him. And today I saw a man 103 years old pass away on Janet's birthday. So happy birthday to you, Janet Carolson.
Me
Janet
and Bob
Kirk
Marley and Ronald Reagan, me and Bob Marley all share today. It was our birthday.
President Ronald Reagan and Janet Carolson and my grandmother, oddly synchronistically enough.
Yeah.
And Bob Marley. So that's interesting. Now Kirk Douglas died. It's Kirk Douglas died today. 103 years old.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's another famous
synchronicity.
Wow, depth. Synchronicity.
Now, I'd like to point out to you, Janet, that with him dying today, if he hadn't on your birthday today, Ronald Reagan's birthday, your birthday, my grandmother's birthday, who was Sarah Esther Bolton, but she was Sarah Esther Richmond, Richman, Richmond on my mother's side. She became a Bolton. She married my grandfather, David Bolton, and they were from England. Liverpool, England, and my mother's, who my mother's mother married, was Richmond, and that's my mother's grandfather raised her. My mother was born 12/5/32, and she remembered the Hitler days, and they were Polish Jews, as they said. But they stopped being Polish Jewish after the war or during the war, and they would do. She wrote a book, so I'll make that part of our book, Portal Stargate. Just mention it, but that's Good Old Days in Louisiana. So that's on Lulu.com.
So
where
she
my
chose
tumor's
not to
publishing.
be Jewish. So she chose not to be Jewish because of what had happened during the war.
The Hitler War. She didn't choose to. They were told to. The Americans were told to stop. And they even got onto them for putting stones on the poor people's graves because it signified the Jewish tradition. And she's got her own story to tell. So she left her book behind called Good Old Days in Louisiana. on Lulu. That's on TJ Morris Publishing, my publishing company. But the coincidences in how we're meeting is amazing to me. Now, there's Paul also talked, I don't know how many of these coincidences we need to mention, but 12/26 is my birthday. And did you get a chance to talk to your friend Jim Peniston, or did you just meet him on Facebook? Because that's the day that Jim Peniston swore 1980 that a lot of things happened. But Paul, you want to address that? Because that's my birthday. And about that?
Yeah,
you know about
sure.
that day?
Jim actually, when I collaborated together on my novel, because one of the chapters presents 4 topics for presentation by the main character, who is really a UFO researcher lecturer. So in one of the chapters, I present 4 different topics of presentation, and one of them is Remerson Forest. And I wanted to be fair, reasonable, and accurate on it, so I sent Jim a copy of the manuscript that mentioned his his experience, and he loved it. He endorsed it, and he said I was a good author. So we have been in communication since then. I've been following the success of his book. He's been following mine.
Paul, are you sitting still? I'm sorry to bother you, but are you sitting still?
Yes, I am. Why?
Oh, it must be your hand on the phone. I'm just picking up background noise. But go ahead.
Oh, okay.
And Janet, you can ask questions. I'm going to mute. Okay.
Yeah. So Jim and I have a good relationship. He's the one that told me about Kindle Direct Publishing, and gave me some information that I didn't understand when I was first publishing the book. He's been very helpful. He's a good guy.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to ask some questions. I saw in your book that you were mentioning Lemuria and some extraterrestrial species. Did you have any direct interactions with any extraterrestrial species?
I'm trying to remember how I came about to use Lemuria. I was doing research about Mount Shasta, and I came across some articles from researchers talking about the Lemurians that may be in the mountain itself. So that's where that came about. So I kind of borrowed from that. I don't have any interaction with anyone of that nature. That came about just from research.
Have you ever had any kind of interaction with any extraterrestrials or craft?
None other than the messages that I got from that psychic woman.
And what did she say relating to ETs? What was her message to you regarding ETs?
She was more spiritual, but there was obviously information about extraterrestrials and their activity on the planet. A lot of it, though, had to do with extraterrestrials originating from places in the planet, which is a theme that I have in the novel. So Antarctica, Alaska, the Himalayas, in the ocean, and of course South Bay, New Mexico. But the interaction that I've had is through an entity that call themselves the Watchers, and according to her, the Watchers are like an echelon below the realm of what we would call angels, and their mission is just to monitor the activity on the planet and maybe guide us spiritually. So that is the only interaction that I have had with anyone that isn't human.
Interesting. And what kind of interactions did you have with the Watchers?
What is the what? I'm sorry.
What kind of interactions did you have with the Watchers?
Right. It was they would communicate to me through the medium, the psychic woman. She would go into a trance, and she would type things on the computer and send me the information. She wouldn't know what she would be sending me until she read it afterwards, and then I would ask her some more things, and sometimes they would be communicating back, and sometimes they wouldn't. And she mentions that many times what would happen when she would get these messages, that it would actually affect her physically, that she would get like mild headaches and stuff like that. So she tried not to do that very often.
And what message did they have for you in particular?
Very simple, actually. Just at one time I was a blogger, so they would tell me to keep doing what I was doing, that I would know what to do when the time came. And it was very cryptic, actually. Nothing direct, but giving me positive feedback on what I was doing, and every once in a while telling me about how important it is to maintain a spiritual attitude about what is going on, and keep that link going with the UFO phenomenon.
Did her message ring true for you?
Oh yes, absolutely. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any reason why this woman would make up this stuff.
Right.
She's very, very humble, and she's not the kind of person that wants to draw attention to herself. She's very, very private. But when we first started interacting, it was only a week or two when she started to get these messages. So I think it was meant to be that way.
Mhm. So is your book part of what you're supposed to do?
Yes, I believe so. That's pretty much what the ending is like when the main character understands what's going on. It's kind of difficult in that nature. They mentioned that I'm a counselor informer, and then I use the novel to inform, but also to entertain.
Do you have any background or experience in counseling?
If I have a background or experience in what?
Education or background or experience as a counselor?
No. Being an officer in the Air Force, you know a little bit about leadership, and you know a lot about communication. So that's one thing, and I got a degree in management. That part of part of that degree, you learn a lot about behavior and how people are motivated or what motivates them, and the human behavior is a big part of being a manager. So, other than that, no, I don't have any experience of being a counselor.
Well, Paul, I'd like you to.
Real so.
Just the title that
Paul,
you gave me.
Can you hear me, Paul?
Yeah.
All right. My company, before all the other Ascension Centers, I was guided like you are, but not by I'm a psychic. Does my name as a psychic, it's been out there since the 80s, and I've trained probably over 1,500 psychics. I quit counting back in the day in Houston and in Hawaii. But does my name Tara or Tara as a psychic mean anything to you? I haven't read your book, but I'm a psychic, and a lot of the psychics I train knew of my story of the Ascension Age and the Ascension Center, and why I started training psychics in the Ascension Center. Does Tara mean anything to you?
Tara?
That's my name.
Huh. It's funny because one of the characters in the novel is named Tara.
You say Tara. That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about your character that you put me in your book. Am I a psychic in your book?
No, she's actually based on a real person, and she's a U.S. Air Force airman who was a radar specialist at Nellis, and they abused her physically and mentally, tortured her to make certain that she wouldn't retain this forbidden information, where she was given tasks to.
You're fading. Can you speak louder? Give me your louder radio voice. You're fading into the. Yeah, speak louder. You're losing your breath. So Tara is an Air Force in the Air Force in your book.
Yeah, and now
okay.
and she was a radar specialist, and she was working on radar that would be used on high performance, high velocity vehicles that were not in our inventory. So what
Sounds
they did
like
is
me.
what's that?
Janet will explain that later. But Janet, this is very blowing my mind because I knew Paul as part of our Portal Stargate in our ACO Authors Book Club. So we all might get to write a chapter of the Portal Stargate together. Who knows? But, okay, Paul, keep going. Whatever you want to share about your Tara Air Force. What kind of equipment? You mean not of Earth origin? Did you use any of our acronyms in the alien ET UFO community? Like NEOs or not of Earth origin or UAPs or EBINs or anything like that with Tara or not?
Just one chapter where she is she's been in a underground bunker, actually an underground training center, and they find her and they rescue her, and then they get out, but
Did you read my book? All this stuff is information free and has been on a lot of books I've written. And I told Janet that this is the year it's all going to come, be out there, called the Ascension Age. But you sound like you're talking about me. Where did you get this information? Yeah.
This is based on a real person, and I think she prefers to be anonymous. But she's been on shows, and she's also been harassed by the government. And she wrote a book, in fact, and I guess it didn't do very well. But she wrote a book about her life and her experiences in the Air Force, and it's quite a read. but I tried to get her to read the chapter so that I would get some concurrence from her. And in my novel, the girl gets rescued when in real life she did not get rescued. And she wrote back to me that she says, I wish that would have happened to me. That's the only thing that she wrote. I think she was misunderstanding what the intent of the book was. But and she suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder too. So it's not easy to communicate with her. It's best to be with her probably in person rather than to try and communicate through the internet.
Well, Google asked me for some of my books for free a long time ago. And a lot of the metaphysical people and the people in the UFO business know my stories. As a matter of fact, they pick them up and make them their own. So I've been putting stories that are, to me, real because I experienced them for years and years inside the internet. And Google has a lot of my books out there free. Folks, you can put in Teresa J. Thurman DeMorris or T.J. Morris or Teresa J. Morris to find them. And a lot of them appear on Google. And you can use the word ascension or psychic or ET or UFO. And I've even heard some of my friends tell me about people that copied my story. And a lot of people asked me if they could use my story. But now Janet and I are concerned about in the future our copyrights on our books. So, Paul, we'll have to work with you because it sounds like you got a lot of my story. And if you ever get hold of my books, there's too many out there. But the key words have been part of, the internet since we started in 87 on our project with Stanton Friedman to promote UFO Association in 87. And I went to see Jesse Marcel. It's sometime in the early 70s, and my husband went to work in 67. I had my daughter in 68, and so Angela was born, and then Lauren was born when man walked on the moon. So Angie was born 3/25/68, and Lauren was born on 4/3/70. But I've got stories that intertwine. Now, you mentioned she said she was harassed by the government. Why weren't you harassed? And because you made it a novel, or did she write a bio? Because I'm in that situation myself. I've read a lot of books, but they ask for them. So I tell them they can put them in Google. But I need you to explain that because Janet and I are fixing to do a book, but it may have to be a novel. Now, tell me what you know because you were in the Air Force and why you're not harassed if she is and you're not, please.
I think because she was harassed because she divulged a lot of secrets and she used it as a bio, as a biography. And me, I present it as fiction, and I let the reader, figure out what is truth and what is not. But I do have a premise, and the novel is really meant for people to think. It's thought-provoking. It makes them think about what they had believed in before reading it, and comparing what is going on in our society too. So there's, as I mentioned, the government likes to have as much information out there as possible, and fiction is fine with them. And I consider myself a very minor, target as far as being a threat to the government or to divulging any secrets. There aren't any secrets in the book other than maybe what happened at Wright-Patterson, but that's been taken care of. They removed everything themselves, so they could come back and say that it never happened. But after that, there are no national secrets in the book.
Hi. We put ourselves on mute, and then there's a delay.
Oh, okay.
All right, so you don't have any major secrets, so they're not going to take you out, but I guess that's the one thing to be careful that you're not saying too much. I guess if you're taken out, you said too much. Be too late. Woo! Anyway, so you've never been threatened by the Men in Black, so you're telling your story, you fictionalize it, and that apparently has been going on for a long time. I know Gene Roddenberry was conveying things that were basically true, things that he had uncovered. He had whistleblowers come in, but as long as you fictionalize it, they're fine with it because they just dismiss it and say, oh, that's science fiction. In fact, if you're fictionalizing it, they'll always say, well, that's just science fiction, even if it is true. In a way, you invalidate your information by fictionalizing it, but that's exactly what they want you to do, so invalidate it so they have deniability, and they just say, oh, it was coincidence that were somehow truthful. But to adjust what TJ said, these stories have been getting out there for the last 50, 60, 70 years now, and there are some similarities with the stories. There are people that have flown craft and been on board ships and have realized that ships are intelligent and that they take a pilot that communicates telepathically with the ship in order for the ship to navigate. Sometimes the ships are sentient themselves, or people have been to underground facilities. There's people coming forth from the secret space program, and there's MyLab's experiences and lifelong abductees and contactees and one-time abductees and nothing else happens. So CJ and I have been tracking these stories actively since 2012, but I think, we're both experiencers. We've been living in these and been witnessing people in private places before the Internet came about, and we were able to take it to another level. So, okay, so let me look through your synopsis here. Background.
Also, I want to talk about I want to talk about. She can be rounding up the final questions to assess this book, and it's called The Disclosure Paradox. Paul G. Vecchiet, and I don't think it's a coincidence, folks, that he and I found each other. But Paul, I want to talk about the synchronicities that are going on, because the extraterrestrials did involve me, and there's no other earthly explanation, because I've got too many coincidences in my life for the extraterrestrials and the Men in Black, and me being a man in black, a woman in black. And then I never appeared in any UFO shows, but I've worked with men, the X-Men, and some of that. You mentioned X-Files, so that always brings up Dr. Rick Miller, who I'm also helping because he has so many books out there on metaphysics. He's a metaphysician. But I want you to know, did you see Mirage Men when they did a film on with Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe, and Rick Doty, main players, and Roger Moore? Are you familiar with the Mirage Men on Google or Netflix? Miragemen,
Yeah.
Mirage.
Is that recent?
Oh, it's been around for a while. It's like a documentary story of trying to control the narrative based on an outside looking in. And Rick Doty was a U.S. Air Force person like yourself, but he was working in, I don't know his story. I keep asking him to come on, but he's under non-disclosure or non-disclosure agreement because he writes for Hollywood now. So he takes his reality like we're doing tonight on this radio show, but he gives ideas and writes them up for people. I don't know who he's writing for. I guess, I don't know if he's working with Prometheus Entertainment. He didn't tell me. But what you'll have to do is look at it, because this they put this level of intelligence and propaganda out to the public back in the early 80s to when I was in 80 to 93. And I thought the Bob Lazar story in 87 was going to be disclosure. But it turned out to be not disclosure. But a lot of people, he's recently came back out. George Knapp, at least the story was in there. But the main players were like, Dr. Bruce, he went in there. But Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe, telling a story to somebody, but they show the early Laughlin, Nevada International UFO Congress is where it was staged, and it must be when Bob Brown started the original UFO Congress with Wendell Stevens. And so what I'd like you to do is view that, if you can, when you can. It's called Mirage Man. I told Janet to watch it years ago. But, what you and I and Janet are doing.
I saw that when I was judging movies at the UFO Congress. So I saw it when it was new to the field. And so, but I don't remember all the details. I mean, what about in particular do you want us to pay attention to? What is the... Summarize why it's so important in your mind.
The reason is there's various levels in the UFO industry that we are keeping alive, because everybody that's involved is like Jan Aldrich with my UFO Association says people aren't getting wealthy writing books, and he doesn't approve of a lot of the speakers because various people in the military that were involved and know the truth in their perceptions and their observation while it was going on. So we became original historians. And then Richard Dolan came along and read a few books, and I like Richard, and I told him so, and he's been on this radio show too. So people can go back and hear the stories right here since 2012. But what I'm saying is Janet, me, and Paul, I hope, will work together and explain at a different level that we've all been involved, about what parts of synchronicity brought us together, just like Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe, and Rick Doty, those three people. That's also two men and one woman, but we're two women and one man. But I'm bringing this, what would you call that?
So what do you
Paul,
think,
you're the more educated.
Brought us together? TJ, what do you think brought us together? Was it like an ET connection, a Men in Black connection? Because I don't know how you met Paul. Paul,
I haven't met Paul.
TJ, did you call? Well, I mean, met him on the internet or met him in cyberspace.
I don't know. I told him to be ready for that question tonight. So let's see if he did his homework.
Paul, how did you meet TJ?
Well, I think TJ actually sent out a friend request to me, but there are two versions of TJ's account. So I have one from, I don't know, probably about a month ago, and then this recent one, which was, maybe last week that we interacted?
I don't know, because in Facebook, I have so many of them. Every time I'd get a new cell phone, that would automatically create a new Facebook, something to do with the bots and algorithms. But I agreed, because back in the day when I started, 2006, I waited up all night to get my name, and I had to write Facebook because they gave my name to somebody else. It was just Teresa Morris. So I've still got 5,000 on there, but I don't know, because all of a sudden, after I became a developer and I was inside Facebook and I had 20 or 30, they kept sending them to me, and I became an industry, a personality inside Facebook like I did with Google. So some people thought I was being hacked, but it turned out they were all me. And so some people were disgruntled about it, and some weren't. But it changed Facebook. So I don't know, but I've got 20 or 30. But it depends on. I've got 5 phones right now, so it depends on which one I pick up, as to which TJ or Teresa or Tara or Teresa Jeanette Thurman Morris or TJ Morris you get. Same thing with YouTubes. I must have 500 YouTubes, and I've got 500 pages and groups. So I've been doing this inside cyberspace, but I started with the government way before DARPA and Google. Ray Kurzweil started with he moved over from DARPA to Google. I don't remember when that was, but I remember it's fairly recent in my life. But it's back in the day when there was government, DARPA, Network Solutions, and then I think Network Solutions became web.com. But I don't know, to tell you the truth, how Paul and I got together. I asked him that question. And he said, well, you've got...
It doesn't matter.
Not just
it
one,
matter.
two.
We all find each other.
I think
whatever.
I think the point is, Paul, that we got together.
Yeah. Can we, if you want to take this through to the end, I'm sorry, I have to take a break here. Nature call. So anyway, I'll be back in 5 minutes. I'll see if you're still on. Okay?
Okay, Paul. Yeah, it doesn't matter how we get together, except the fact that people like me, I don't track the content. I track the structure. And you being an architect, I would find that most interesting, how you build it. I don't care about the content you put in the building. I want to know who's building it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So that's why I want to know how people cross my path, and why I have I guess why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm trying to say that what I do is important to my own ego, I guess, like you do with your book and me with my radio show, our books, putting us together so we can all three meet each other. But Janet has to, we've only got 12 minutes, so Paul, do you have anything in your book about synchronicities?
Absolutely. All kinds of stuff. It's dream sequences, meeting people, saying the right thing to have people activate something in their mind and divulge things that they never divulged to anyone else. And those are all actual events that occurred to me with various people. Yeah.
All right, let me ask you what Janet was asking us. Why does this seem important with me, her, and you? She doesn't get that, but she hadn't read any of my books but one, Roswell UFO Encounter. She keeps only one. I've sent her others, but she's not a big reader or has time to read because she's too busy writing them with her husband. She writes Anunnaki books. But anyway,
really?
Yeah, Dr. Alexander Sasha Lesson and Janet Kara Lesson, and they've been speakers at many UFO events, including Contact in the Desert, and then she spoke at least one for California UFO conferences, and I spoke at Mid-South Con in 2016, and I flew up to Chicago. No, I drove to help Marta Thomas with the Global Pyramid Conference. And then I recently spoke at the ones here in Navarre Conference Center, at the Days Inn Conference Center. We can do over 300 people at any time, but they come and go from the door. And I spoke on my book and my husband's book about my psychic near-death experience and UFO encounters, and how our fleet exists off the planet and how it all comes together. So that's why I told you, I think we're writing the same book. And Janet, I was hoping would figure that out, but we have to see what your book's about. The Disclosure Project, so we can compare notes, right? Go ahead. Oh, Disclosure Paradox.
Right.
All right. Well, tell us why you named it that, and now go back to you being an author, as an independent author, and hopefully your guides or whoever you listen to, your watchers or whoever your higher self, gravitates to. Did this woman charge you minutes for her time as a psychic reader?
No, absolutely not. No, we're friends. I never had any psychic readings per se where I paid for the services. It was always talking to people that say that they are psychic and that they just happen to be psychics, but it's not their primary source of income.
Right, that's the way I am. Exactly. So that's well. How do you? I'm very curious as to how you do it, Paul. I'm pleased the fact that you've got the disclosure paradox. So you've been able to see how all this. See, a lot of people in UFO business didn't see how the extraterrestrials work with psychics or remote viewers or mediums or precognitives like me. But by the time we put all our stories on blogs out there, they become entertainment in the film industry. So somebody's reading what we're putting out there, and now you're writing about it, making it a real story. So I'm going to turn it back over to you. We've got about 8 minutes left on the recording time. The paradox.
Well, you know what disclosure is, right?
I'm sorry, what?
You know what disclosure is, right? The term disclosure, what it refers to.
Oh, I've referred to it for about 30 years.
Okay.
Depend. We used to interview people that were writing about it, including me. So we're the old guys that write about it. But yeah, we have different people that have exopolitics, and then we have back in the 80s when we had it through the press in Washington, and I know a lot of people in the business. So Steve and Dr. Greer, Michael Sala, but Michael was there. But I have a lot of friends that were in the military that helped form that back in the day, in the 80s. So I think we need to keep going from 40s to the 80s and then 80s forward, because we have a lot of authors since Ruppelt set the Bible up.
Okay.
You know who he is, right?
Well, the basic premise behind the novel, is everyone feels that disclosure is going to provide free energy and the cure for cancer and peace and love throughout the planet. And putting all the pieces together, all the messages that I got, going back to what Robert Dean was telling about ourselves, I present that as disclosure is not really what would be beneficial for us. In fact, there's a reason that we are under what's called a universal quarantine. And again, going back to what Robert Dean was saying, we are barbaric, we're violent, we are materialistic, and above all, we're genocidal. So here's the hypothesis, and it's not a hypothesis. This is why governments have been advised by extraterrestrials to keep it all as secret as possible. If we were to have disclosure, you would eventually have a transfer of technology. If we were to have the transfer of technology because of our negative attitude and our behavior, and very spiritually corrupt way that we are, we would take that technology and we would weaponize it. And eventually, because they are different than us, we would, our genocidal instincts would take over, our materialistic instincts would take over, because we would probably covet some resources that they would have, and we would use the weapons that we made from their technology against them. So that is why we are under a technological and a social quarantine. And until we change, until we fundamentally change the way we are, it will stay that way. And there never will be disclosure. If disclosure does happen, then it's not good, and there will be a preemptive strike on us because they don't want us is a universal agreement, and it's also an agreement between them and the world governments. So what is the paradox? The paradox is, how can we improve ourselves? How can we fix ourselves when we are not allowed to know what's wrong with us? That's the essence of the novel.
Oh, awesome. I love the way you put the words together. So basically the meaning or definition is the action of making new or secret information known. Basically, just a fact, especially a secret that's made known for disclosure. And I love the way that you chose the two words and you put it with paradox. So, folks, this is a real opportunity to get to know how each of us have our own filters, perceptions, and use words. And I love wordcraft as much as speechcraft, but paradox is seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement or proposition that when investigated or explained may provide to be well-founded or true. So that's the two words that this great citizen of the United States of America, even though he's born in Italy, you have dual citizenship, or did I ask you that? But he put these two words together for all of us in his book, and I'm very excited. But do you have dual citizenship, Paul? Or am I saying that right? You're an American?
Oh, no, I got naturalized when I was 18.
Well, today they're making the world known with this virus, and I'm not going to put that even in translating, but you know what I'm talking about around the world, folks, globally, that we are seeing the world become how we're going to work. We didn't know if it was going to be, they were going to show you a extraterrestrial ship with extraterrestrials, or we were going to use a way to teach the world that we are going to the next level globally, but we're in two factions. And I agree with Paul, and I told Jim Mars, who was passed a long time ago in the 80s, because he and I were Texas investigative reporter types. He was allowed to be in the open, and I wasn't. But I told him, I said, my husband and I realized it was like the kids playing with the matches. And I've noticed that the narrative in the Internet only goes as far as those they're willing to stick their neck out and say, okay, this is how it is. But Paul, since he became aware, I guess, of how to put his story together, I'm very pleased that he made it The Disclosure Paradox. Now, that's by Paul G. Vecchiet, our guest tonight, with our ACO Association Authors Book Club. I said on here I made you the poster child, Paul, to speak for our ET radio shows. Well, you put it set together so well. These are my stories all over the Internet, folks. And I did that. I started the game years and years ago, back in before 2005. But Windows 95 helped me get all these stories out there that Google and the bots and everybody helped pick up. So I can see it happening in the Internet, but you know, we all are special, and we're all called to do our own life story, as my mother said. But, Paul, I hope you'll stick with me and Janet and all our friends and social media. And I hope you're going to write another book, because I haven't bought this one yet. But, folks, you can get it on Amazon, The Disclosure Paradox. So if you do, please tell him or email him that you heard about it on TJ Morris ET Radio, whether you're on Stitcher, Skype, FM radio, Podbean, Spotify, you know, it doesn't matter. I distribute all over, and I pay for extra. I have to pay money to get these authors distributed. So whether you buy the book or not, at least you can hear about it. But, Paul, I'm very
I also
excited.
have a website. It's www.thedisclosureparadox.com, and there people can read excerpts from the chapters, read the prologue which sets up the plot, read the character descriptions, and even read reviews.
Yeah. And did you say you did that on Wix or Weebly or?
I did Wix, yeah. It was great.
Or Google. Okay. And then the Google Books, it's up there. Let's see. You can hit books.google.com books, and then the Disclosure Paradox. Be sure and put the word "the" in there. He's an independent publisher. I hope he comes with our group, or one of them. And folks, you can go to patreon.com/Teresa J. Morris. I put a J in there. But let me read this disclosure. Louis Silvani is his protagonist, I guess, his main character. UFO lecturer and ET obsessed blogger struggles to convey a sense of urgency to his curious followers. After a failed presentation and a terrifying encounter, Lewis meets Mary Ellen Velarde, I guess Hikaria Apache woman with divine knowledge of Lewis himself. Together, they embark on a fast-paced journey of discovery, full of physical and spiritual challenges and people with astonishing abilities. So as Mary Ellen gradually reveals her own unique identity, a cell of abductees and veterans forms with a goal of assisting civilization towards its true identity. Is disclosure the one event that needs to happen in order to save humanity from itself? Let me see what else you said here. The Disclosure Paradox crosses over multiple genres with action, spirituality, social voice, and relatable characters who mirror the diversity in this world. So readers will ponder our existence, okay? So this book brings controversial issues to light, which will provoke serious discussion and questioning, we hope, of convention or at some of our conventions. And hopefully we're going to get Lewis to talk about the why, but he's also an author, so we hope his intent is to keep writing great stories so he can go to these book events and help promote his book. But there's those that have set religious beliefs who rely exclusively on science for guidance. So most of all, after reading the book, it's hoped that people are moved to partake in a spiritual revolution, which I believe we are, and we're in that, called the Ascension Age. So the book addresses a place where science and spirituality converge, and the book will appeal to those who believe or question traditional religious teachings, people with military interests or experiences, people that believe in life or other planets, or people who believe those in power have ulterior motives, and those who are spiritually awakened. Now, that is the Paradox Disclosure by author Paul G. Vecchiet. It says Paul Vecchiet. Paul, you're a good speaker, and I apologize this wasn't real pure tonight, but I'm going to invite you to come back to be on a panel as an author, if you'd like, and to do further radio shows. If you like me and Janet, you think you'd be interested in coming back?
Yeah, sure. Let me know when I could help. And yes, I am writing a second novel right now.
Yeah. Well, let's see if we can't get you involved as an author with us. And some people come back once a month, and some people just come to be on a panel to share with other people like us, authors that feel driven to write and to share and to be in the Ascension Age. And you've definitely worked this out, and I believe you have a higher power connection, and your oversoul is your higher self, and you're talking to me now because our higher selves and those that we can channel above ourselves has something for us to do that we may not be totally aware of yet. So, Paul, I enjoy finding out why we meet, the synchronicities, and how you and I got together. But that doesn't matter how. The fact is, we're the now. What is this Mowgli? Is Mowgli your dog?
Mowgli is one of our dogs. Yep.
And Lila, is that a female Lila?
Yeah, Layla, she's they're both rescues. Yep. Mowgli is a pit Labrador, and Layla is a Dachshund Australian Shepherd. Yep.
Oh, interesting. Wow, I love dogs. I have a little Shih Tzu. Well, you're in West Virginia. Now, do you live in Arlington or do you live near Tyson Corners? I'll probably ask you that already. What part of West Virginia are you in? D.C.
I'm
area?
in rural West Virginia, which is just over the border of Virginia, near the Panhandle. And I'm actually 45 minutes from where I work, which is Winchester, Virginia. So we're about 80 miles west of Washington, D.C.
I remember Winchester. It seems like I used to deliver there. I don't know. Is that the biggest town, Winchester?
Well, it's the biggest
Around
town
you?
near me. Yeah.
So you really live out in the sticks. I did too, 20 years in Kentucky. Winchester, Hattiesburg. Now, let's see, maybe I'm wrong. Oh, I'm saying Winchester where I live. So you're in Winchester, West Virginia.
No, that's Winchester, Virginia. But I live in West Virginia. Yeah.
Oh, Winchester, Virginia, and you live in West Virginia. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Well,
Yeah.
Paul, you're wonderful. You're a soft-spoken soul creature, whatever you want to say, humanoid. And I hope you'll watch The Curiosities, especially people 100 years old or more. And I hope you'll come back and share with Janet and I. And if you feel the need to talk, we have panels for you to be involved in with other authors.
Okay.
And we do shows Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, either between she or I or both of us. And we have a lot of friends that do radio shows, okay? So I'm sure we'll pass you around. Now, keep my number. You got my number, Paul? Or because I know you said you couldn't get through.
Yes, I got it.
All right, I apologize for that. All right, well, let's have you back with the ACO Association or ACO Club. And just stay in touch with me, Paul. And who knows, we may wind up being a character in your book, which is a good hook if you find good friends that don't mind you doing it, right? you like that. That's funny, huh? Okay, well, maybe you'll wind up being in my book. You never can tell, right?
Yep.
Well, I want to see what you're going to do next, because the idea of your novel that I think you've been extraterrestrially influenced, but that's just in my own opinion, right?
Yeah, no, it's very likely. Yeah.
So I would like you to pursue that or make it a chapter, because we like to feel special and we like to feel chosen. But the things that happen to me, I haven't even written about all the off-the-wall things that happen. And I'm not sure how to get there. So maybe I'll just put it. They don't like the UFO people don't want to read a novel. They want to read the real deal. But not everybody like you and I that wear a uniform are very good at putting it down. So I like your idea, a novel. And I did the same thing with my husband when he was alive. So Roswell, UFO Encounters. But now Ahmad did that for me again. And it's called, what is it called? Allied Command something. Allied Command Odyssey, I think, or Alien Contact Odyssey. I don't even know, but we redid it. And Allied Command Odyssey, I think, Paul. But stick with me if you don't mind. We'll get to know each other better on social media and hopefully in our authors club. And I'm going to encourage you to keep writing books if that's okay with you. And any way I could help, I'd be more than happy to, if that's okay with you.
Thank you.
All right, yeah. Hey, Paul, I'll have to try to grab this Allied Command Odyssey. It says UFO Odd, you say. I can see that. And I think you'll find Tara in that book. But I'll see if I can grab it free for you. I'm going to put it on my YouTube. I just found it. But thank you for that, because Ahmad's been after me to tell people about that. I'll put Ahmad Painter. Ahmad Painter edited this. Ahmad Painter, here's the book. And I'll have you, what day is good for you to come back? Because I usually do it by day. Was this good for you or not?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
All right. Well, would you like to come back and talk about that stuff and may have in common in the military and the underground?
Yeah, sure. I'll answer whatever questions you give me. That's the best of my ability. Sure.
Okay, good. Well, you did a really good job. Thank you. I understood you were on 2 other radio shows before this. So this was number 3 live. Is that correct?
Yes, this is number 3. I was on a panel on another show, but the previous 2 shows I was using my iPhone, which is a government phone, and I think there were keywords that I said, and then they started scrambling, so that was not good. So I'm not using the government phone anymore.
That's hilarious. I don't get that. I wanted to talk to you more, so I may have you come back to interview more. Whoa. Okay, let me get that off. I found the book, and it took me. I didn't know it was a show, too. All right, well, thank you, Paul. Please come back and sit in with our Authors Club, if you don't mind, and I'm sure we'll have you back as soon as you tell me when you won't come back, and you don't get to speak the whole time, but you've been on a panel. So if you'd like to come back Fridays, definitely Friday nights from 7 to 9, same time. Okay, Paul?
Yep. Okay.
Thank you, and I really look forward to knowing you and being a character in your next book. All right, Paul, thank you, and stay in touch, okay? I love you to laugh. It makes me feel good. I didn't even get to know you good yet, so you'll have to come back so we can talk. And just stay friends on Facebook, and we'll email and stuff. So email me stuff, and we'll figure this out. Remember the prickly cactuses, right?
Right.
All right. Well, come up with some ideas on radio shows for our Authors Club, but if we don't have to talk about books only, you can come back and be more fun with me, okay?
Okay.
All right. Love and light until you show up tomorrow night or some other night. Just that was Paul Vecchiet. Thank you, Paul. I'm going to get out of here. So thank you. You did an excellent job.
All right. Good night.
Talk to you later.